All right, so good morning again. Good day to everyone. So thank you for being patient. No? So there was a technical difficulty with our video. So we will be recording this lecture naman, so it's okay. If ever, in one way or another, your internet connection will be interrupted in the course of our lecture. Okay, so without further ado, let's dive in. So before we start with our presentation, so I want you to think about our nervous system as like, no, as if it is, or it's not as if, but it is like, no, the operating system, no, of our gadgets, just like our laptop, our computers, even our phone. We have an operating system. So in the same way also, that analogy applies to our nervous system, because it's the one who controls rather the different activities of our body. All right. So from the most na maliit until sa pinakamalaking happenings in our body, it's the one that controls. So today, I have said earlier na this is, I believe, one of the most expected na topics that you have in this subject, no? So the anatomy of our nervous system. So we'll look later into the different systems and also the different parts and also the functions. Okay, so let's go to our PowerPoint slide. So this is chapter 3 from our textbook of Dr. Pinil, entitled Anatomy of the Nervous System, Systems, Structures, and Cells that Make Up Your Nervous System. Here are the topics that we'll be looking into today. We have the general layout of our nervous system, the cells, neuroanatomical techniques and directions which are needed for us to locate, no, and to study the brain and the other parts of our nervous system. We also have the spinal cord, the 5 major divisions of the brain, and the major structures of the brain. So just a few reminders that our book didn't really delve too much on the other structures, but only the major ones, because these are the ones that you will really need, no, all throughout our textbook and all throughout our subject. However, if you will go to medical school, or you will, we don't know if you would like to have your master's and PhD outside of the country for neuroscience, or di kaya biopsychology mismo. So you will really delve more into the other structures of the brain. But for now, yung mga major yung i-discuss natin. Alright? So the nervous system is a communication network consisting of nerve cells, both inside and outside of the brain, and the spinal cord. So ayan, no, pinakita yung ano natin, yung CPU yan ng ating computer, desktop computer. So ganyan din. So in the same way that there are a lot of, tingnan natin dito, there are a lot of wires connected to different parts of our desktop. Okay, so in the same way also, our nervous system is related to both inside and outside of the brain and spinal cord. As shown here in this diagram, if you already are familiar with this, no, with your general psychology, we know that the central nervous system is composed of the brain and the spinal cord, while the peripheral nervous system, yung outside, so the rest of the body except the brain and the spinal cord. And our PNS is divided into the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. So more on, yung somatic comes from the word soma or cell body. So ito yung mga sensations na nakukuha natin, no, from the environment. Autonomic nervous system is more on the motor. Okay, wait lang. Ayan. And in the somatic nervous system, we have the afferent nerves, then the efferent nerves. Ganun din sa autonomic, no? We have afferent and efferent. So for you to be more familiarized about the functions, no, of these two nerves, let's take in consideration yung first letters ng kanilang words. So afferent, A for approach, no? Yun. Meanwhile, ito namang E is exit, so going out. And in the E and S, meron pang other structures or other divisions. Sa efferent nerves, yung mga pang-exit, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. So later we'll be looking into the specific na mga functions nila. Ayan. So I already said, no, in the previous slide that the brain and spinal cord are part of CNS, and the brain is in our skull, and our spinal cord is in our spine. CNS, yun nga. It serves to bring information into the CNS and carry out signals of the CNS. Okay, so brings back and forth information to our CNS. Para silang mga messengers. So the two parts of our PNS, the somatic, no, andyan. Yung sa afferent nerves, it's more of sensory, no, the nerves. Sa efferent, more on motor. Autonomic, more on sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves, and they are opposite to each other. Both are in the efferent. So, yung sympathetic natin, we will delve later into that. Okay? So, ayan. Ayan. Illustrations for you. And parasympathetic, sympathetic. Okay, so our autonomic nervous system on the efferent nerves, we have sympathetic and parasympathetic. They have opposite effects. Kasi later we'll look into why, no? And I want to emphasize here that there's a two-stage neural path. Neuron exiting the CNS synapses on the second stage neuron before the target organ. Ayan, so may two stages that happens, no? Ayan, so sa sympathetic, yung thoracic and lumbar, no, it's related to the fight or flight response. And the second stage neurons are far from the target organ. So, ayan, sympathetic, it's far from target organ. Meanwhile, parasympathetic, it's for rest and relaxation, no, restoration of our body. Yung ano naman dito are the cranial and sacral. And also, kung sa sympathetic, the second stage neurons are far, ito naman near the target organ. So basically, yun, pinakita natin the general layout of our nervous system, no? And nakita natin how amazing our body is and how complex it is, no? And the way it works and the different functions, parang it makes us appreciate, no, whatever or whoever made us, no, to be like this kind of complicated being inside our body, to be existing in this world, diba? That ako yun yung one of the realizations that I had with all the complexities, tapos parang all the functions and all the processes, parang ang perfect nila, diba? How it was designed, no? Kung sa robot man, no? We even copy, no? The way our body works to the way we create AI, right? The artificial intelligences. And we cannot perfect it, diba? Madaming glitches. But look at us. Okay, so let's go naman to yung mga nagpro-protect, no, sa ating nervous system. So first is in the CNS. Let's go to our brain first. So ito yung mga defense, kumbaga, or yung protection. So we have the meninges, ventricles, the cerebrospinal fluid. CNS is encased in bone and covered by 3 meninges. We have here the dura mater, which is the tough outer membrane. So yung dura mater is tough mother. Baka siguro pinangalan nila to kasi we know that our mothers are really tough. Ano lang yan? Advertisement. And we have also the arachnoid membrane. So if you are familiar, no? Arachnophobia, the fear of spiders. So it's also named after that because this membrane has a web-like appearance. And on the innermost part, we have the pia mater. So it adheres to the CNS surface. So when you try to kung lalakmiton ba natin pia mater, more likely the CNS surface will also be, some of its parts will be makukuha din siya. Okay? Parang when we eat yogurt, no? We buy yogurt from the store, tapos we try to open it, tapos meron pang, di ba? Meron pang nandyan. So that's also how the pia mater is very near to our CNS surface. And we also have the cerebral spinal fluid. It's the fluid that serves as cushion. So when our head will be bumped, no? Hindi masyadong maapektuhan. It's one of the protection of our brain. So hindi masyadong maapektuhan yung ating brain. Hindi siya masyadong maano sa surface because we have this cerebral spinal fluid. And the cerebral spinal fluid, nandito siya sa subarachnoid space ng ating mga ventricles. Okay, so nandyan siya. So we can see here, no, the lateral ventricles, the 2 lateral ventricles, the 3rd ventricle, the cerebral aqueduct, the 4th ventricle, and the central canal. So parang may reservoir dyan sila. Kasi nandyan ang ating cerebrospinal fluid. And our cerebrospinal fluid is produced by the choroid plexus. So ito ay mga networks of capillaries that protrude into the ventricles from the pia mater. And kung titingnan natin dyan, no, on the center, yung malapit sa 4th ventricle, nandiyan yung cerebral aqueduct, if there will be a tumor there, mababara kasi, no, yung flow ng cerebrospinal fluid natin So, magkakaroon ng excess na CSF. And what will happen is, yung tinatawag natin na hydrocephalus. If you're familiar with that, no, sa mga, ano natin, sa TV or kung na-search ninyo, di ba, yung lumalaking ulo, it's because of the excess nga na fluid. So, yung treatment dyan is to drain the excess fluid from the ventricles and trying to remove the obstruction, which is the tumor. All right. And another that protects our brain chemically is the blood-brain barrier. These are tightly packed cells of blood vessel walls that prevent entry of many molecules. So yun, so maraming mga kinds of drugs na hindi makakapasok agad-agad in our brain because of this blood-brain barrier. And of course, you already said earlier, the physical protections, as shown here. So we're done with the general layout of the nervous system. Then we already know ano yung nagpo-protect sa kanila. Now let's go into a more microscopic view. Okay. So let's go to the neurons and the human brain. We know that in the previous topics that we had, that our human brain is an amazingly intricate network of neurons. These neurons are the cells that receive and transmit electrochemical signals. The cells of the nervous systems, which are the neurons, are specialized cells for the reception, conduction, and transmission of electrochemical signals. And there are many sizes and shapes. Marami sila, and they have their different functions. Alright, so if you have your book, kindly open it na lang, and then look at the structures, i-ano nyo na lang siya, i-zoom out. So, here, or you go back to this na lang para mas maging klarado sa inyo yung pag-explain ko, okay? So, here is a neuron. And we know that we have there the cell body, yung nandito sa upper leftmost part. So, we know that the cell body is the metabolic center of the neuron. And it's also called soma. And yung nag-encase sa kanya na semi-permeable membrane sa soma natin is called the cell membrane, And yung parang mga ugat-ugat dyan, those are called dendrites. They are the ones that receive most of the synaptic contacts. So the short processes emanating from the cell body, and it was highlighted by one of the pinafollow ko, the biopsychologist. It's not only the dendrites that receive the synaptic signals, but medyo mas complicated pa siya. But for the sake of our discussion, to simplify it, okay, so it's the dendrites, yung majority, yung cleared out naman dito that receive most of the synaptic contacts. The axon lap, nandyan naman siya, yung cone shape, yung magtutulay between our axon and also our cell body. Okay? The axons, the long, narrow process that projects from the cell body. Okay? Ayan. Tingnan ninyo yan na parang mga, yung mahaba dyan, na mga tosino, na color violet. Violet siya sa akin. Okay? Yan. Then yung parang, I think this should be gray, yung color. So the myelin, the fatty insulation around many axons. Okay, and we know that the myelin makes the transmission faster. Okay? So para siyang yung conduct, hindi ko lang masyadong sure, pero may part sa ating electrical, no? Sa mga wires natin, no? That makes the electricity move faster. So merong ganyan din. And we have there the nodes of Ranvier. Wow, akala ko yan dati Ranvier. Ranvier pala. It's very European. So these are the gaps between sections of the myelin. Then we have also there the buttons. It's also called the terminal buttons. No? So these button-like endings of the axon branches, which release chemicals into the synapses. So later, we'll look deeper into that kasi ito external pa lang na features naman po. Later, meron siyang mga internal. And we'll know what's inside. And these are very important also na things. And the synapses, ito yung mga gaps, no? On the adjacent neurons across which chemical signals are transmitted. So wala siya talaga sa structure kasi gap talaga siya. Energy gap. Sorry, iba palang gap yun. Anyway, nandyan pa ba kayo?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Dapat, wala naman itong diba? Wala namang sponsor ito ng Milo. Pero dapat nag-Milo kayo para walang energy gap. Wala. Yeah. Ang ating tita joke. Now let's go to the major internal features of a typical neuron. So we'll not focus more so much on the cells, no? You can use this to you can still read about this, no? And use this as your reference. And I believe you already have had this in your biology classes. So parang na lang to, refresher. Pero I wanted to emphasize more into the lower part of our illustration. So that's the terminal button or the button, no? We have there yung parang mga bola dyan na merong mga dots. So that's the synaptic vesicles. These spherical membrane packages store the molecules, the neurotransmitter molecules, na ready to be released near our synapses. And yun, yung mga tuldok-tuldok dyan inside the synaptic vesicles, of course, are the neurotransmitters. So this may have an active influence to other cells. So in our next chapter, we will be looking in depth on the processes that's happening inside the neuron. And part of which is yung neurotransmitters. And these are very important kasi we know that if there's an excess or there is a lack of the neurotransmitters, will cause certain kinds of mental disorders. Okay, so it's a very important topic na we have to put in our hearts. Kasi it's not only, parang siguro with all the, parang integral siya. We as psychology professionals or psychology majors should know about it. Kasi parang it's one of the very important things that we really need to do. Lalo na kung you want, parang it's what makes us, It's one of the things that makes us psychology professionals or psychology students. Knowing about this. Kasi ito yung usual na tinatanong ng mga tao. Anong nangyayari sa kanya? Ano yun? Ano yung sakit niya? So at least if we have this good background about the neurotransmitters, we can give them those fancy, those fancy terms, right? Tapos let them be amazed. Tapos, nasa isip mo, yun lang naman talaga yung natubisado ko all throughout the 4 years. And it wowed them. Charot lang. Okay. Another tita joke. Diba? Okay. Alright, so the cell membrane naman is a lipid bilayer with signal proteins and channel proteins embedded in it. And these types of proteins are important in the on the different actions that happens in the transmission of these electrical signals. And as I've said, the same with the previous one, yung sa neurotransmitters, I will be delving or I will be discussing more about it in the next chapter. Okay. We also have different na mga neurons. So here we have the unipolar neurons. Isa lang yung kanya, isang pole lang naman siya. Ito naman bipolar kasi na dalawa nahati siya. Then we have the multipolar neurons. Okay. Then we have the multipolar interneurons. So siya lang yung walang axons. Okay. Alright, so we're done with the parts of the neurons, the different external and internal parts of it. Then we're also done with the different types of neurons that are available in our body. And we also have now the glial cells. These are the forgotten cells. Bakit siya tinawag na forgotten cells? Kasi less lang yung alam ng mga professionals about the glial cells, but they have found out more, after how many years. So the glial cells are support neurons. Ito yung mga supporting actresses and actors natin. So they outnumber the neurons by 10-to-1 ratio. Recent evidence for glial communication and modulatory effects of glia on neuronal communication. Okay, so meron siyang important part, okay, on neuronal communication. So let's see, we will learn more about this aspect when we look at the different classes of glial cells. So meron tayong glial cells na specific for the CNS. We have also those that are specific for the PNS. The oligodendrocytes, these are extensions reached in myelin, and they create myelin sheaths in the CNS. So yung counterpart niya on the PNS is the Swan cells. So similar function, and they can guide axonal regeneration. We also have the astrocytes. So coming from its root word astro, which is star, it is a star-shaped na glial cells. And it's the largest glia as well. There are many functions of the astrocytes, kindly look for them. I believe one of which is to wait lang. Hanapin nyo na lang. Baka magkamali ako. I will tell you later. Microglia involved in the response to injury or disease. Okay? So ito yung mga pinakamaliliit naman na glial cells. Kasi micro. Very good. The myelination naman of CNS axons between oligodendrocytes and the Swan cells are illustrated here. Okay? So, ayan. Yan yung nangyayaring myelination process between the two. So, on the left is the oligodendrocyte. It's on the nervous system. On the other hand, on the right part, on the PNS. So, ito naman yung sa Swan cells. Ayan. Okay. For the terminologies, please take note of this, para hindi kayo malito. So we have in the CNS, oligodendrocytes, PNS Swan cells. Both of them are myelin-producing glia. Then, for the clusters of cell bodies, yung tawag doon sa oligodendrocytes or nuclei. Yung singular niya are nucleus. The PNS ganglia. Ang singular naman niya ay ganglion. Next, bundle of axons. They're called tracts. While on the PNS or Swan cells, it's nerves. So when I read about this, parang na-realize ko kasi na, okay, kaya pala tinatawag na nerve regeneration. Diba? Kasi when you hear or you see advertisements about B-complex, so meron sinasabing, you need to, this kind of, para you will have nerve regeneration. So, yun pala yun. Because I had this concern before na hindi ako, masakit talaga yung kamay ko from the fingers until sa shoulders, malapit na sa aking neck. And it's because nga, may mga na-damage na nerves. But, yeah, I just took B-complex and praise God, no, na-heal naman ako. Okay? Ganyan kasi pag, masyadong naiipit yung dito na part, ay hindi niyo pala ako nakikita. Yung dito sa may, tong part, yung malapit sa elbow, yung pag magta-type ka, di ba may naiipit? So you shouldn't be typing that way. So dapat i-elevate mo tong yung hand mo. Alright? So, yan? Tip yan sa mga students who are very industrious. Okay? You have also to take care of yourself para hindi kayo magka-nerve damage. Alright? Next. Okay. Now, let's move into neuroanatomical techniques and directions. So, yun, nakita na natin yung different layout ng nervous system, going to microscopic, yung neurons, the protection of the brain, neurons, tapos yung glial cells, no? Now, we are going to be, ito na yung first on our, yung para sa next, yung sa brain, no? Yung brain structure. So we need to know about this para alam natin. Okay? So ito yung ginagamit so that we will know more about the neurons, we will know more about the brain, no? So first is the Golgi stain. So it allows for visualization of individual neurons. And later may tayo, figures. We also have the Nissl stain. It selectively stains cell bodies. So kung kanina, individual neurons, ito naman yung cell bodies, yung soma. And lastly, the electron microscopy. It provides information about the details of the neuronal structure. So this is very specific. Kumbaga na-magnify talaga in 3D. Yung iba, parang 2D lang sila. Okay? Ayan. So that's the first, the Golgi method. So as you can see there, yung neural structures, so a few neurons there. You can see the silhouettes. Okay. Then we have the Nissl stain. So it's a cross-section of the rat hippocampus. So makikita ninyo dyan yung mga dots. Yan yung mga cell bodies. And meron na ding mga microscopes na kinakalculate na din nila. Parang may grade, tapos kinakalculate na din kung ilan. But for the older, no, na mga microscopes, kailangan talagang i-count pa isa-isa yung mga cell bodies or yung soma. And here is a color-enhanced scanning electron microscope. So makita niyo dyan, no, in very vivid detail, yung terminal buttons, no? Yan. And there are also two types of tracing techniques. So, kung titingnan natin paano yung pag-travel or pag-project, no, from the area na gusto natin pag-aaralan. Okay, so anterograde, forward, tracing to where neurons, to where axons project away from the area. So yan, forward. Retrograde is more of the backward, no? Tracing from where the axons are projecting into the area. So yun naman. Ito naman kung saan papunta yung electrochemical signal. Okay? Yan. So when it comes naman to the anatomy, no? So we have to know about this, the anatomical directions. So in a quadrupedal na animal, just like the cat, ito yung anatomical directions. So in the human being, same naman tayo dito sa first. Yung medial is towards the middle, lateral is to outside, no? Then we have there, no, very easy yung sa animals, non-human animals, kasi yung anatomical directions are the same. So dorsal is the back, that's anterior, ventral is near the belly, posterior is dito sa malapit sa tail. The same way also yung sa brain, ganun din. However, for the human beings, it will be different, no? Okay? So kung titingnan ninyo, kasi we are upright, kung sa brain, it's still the same. Ayan, no? Dorsal, anterior, posterior, ventral. But when it comes to the body na, our back, syempre, ito yung may dorsal. And anterior, posterior, ventral. Okay, so please do familiarize yourself with it kasi it will be recurring yung mga ganong directions. Okay? Parang ventromedial, hypothalamus, di ba? So please do memorize them. And of course, yung pa rin naman yung medial and lateral. Okay. So for the anterior and posterior, some uses the term for the anterior is superior, posterior is inferior. So same lang yun sila. Okay, para hindi kayo malito. Okay. So nasabi ko naman yung first. So additional directions, proximal is close, distal is far. So for example, my elbow is near my hand, while my elbow is distal from my toes. So ganon. Okay, so the sections of the brain. We also have these three. So horizontal, no? A slice parallel to the ground. Ayan, horizontal na. Tingnan nyo na lang yung horizontal plane. Frontal naman, it's yung parang nasa-slice ka ng sliced bread. Okay, ganon. On the sagittal, it's separating into half, yung left or right. Okay? When it comes to kung sa middle ka talaga, ikakat mo yung corpus callosum, it's mid-sagittal. And for the other parts of the body, we have cross-section. Yun sa baba. We can also do that, no? Cross-section of our finger. Ay, huwag naman yung finger natin. A finger of another person. Yung medyo, ayaw na natin silang makita. Charot! Yung ganyan! We are kind. Okay. Andyan pa ba kayo? Are you still there?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, again, let's go to the spinal cord. So, medyo pahapyaw lang tayo na mag-discuss about it. So, here, if you can see, yung inner component, the primary, which are primarily cell bodies, gray yung kulay. You can see there, the gray matter. The white matter are in the outside. They are myelinated. Okay? So, talagang mabilis yan. Yung pag-ano ng electrochemical signals natin. Okay? And actually, our reflexes via the spinal cord yung mga yan. So that's why if you go to the doctor, no, iano yung mismo, yung knee-jerk reflexes, hindi na yan hindi yan mag-aano sa via our yung mga cells pa. Diretso yan to our spinal cord or ano pa bang mga reflexes. If yung heat ng pan, yon, mga reflexes yon. So, directly yon sa spinal cord. And the dorsal, it's afferent, so it's more of the sensory. The ventral are the motor, the efferent. Ayan. Gusto ko lang magbigay ng video. Wala naman tong kinalaman talaga. Pero gusto ko lang magbigay ng video as an icebreaker. Did you know that the mummification process, the Egyptians would usually remove the brains through the nose? And so we're now on the brain. Okay? So ginawa ko lang yun para we have something to talk about. Ayan, we have on the few weeks of development of our brain, we have palang the forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain, spinal cord. Then as time goes by, ito na, mas naging complex na. And we have these 5 major divisions of the brain. The telencephalon, which are our cerebral hemispheres. Then the diencephalon, the mesencephalon, the midbrain, metencephalon, our medulla or the myelencephalon, and the spinal cord. Okay? For you to be able na mas madaling mag-memorize, take note niya lang, yung pinakauna is telencephalon. Then after that, everything else is an alphabetical order. Diba? Amazing. So, ganyan yung pag-memorize. 5 major divisions of the brain. Okay, so ayan. The forebrain consists of the telencephalon and the diencephalon, then the midbrain, the mesencephalon, the hindbrain, itong myelencephalon, and the metencephalon. So, myelencephalon is the medulla oblongata. It is composed of large shafts, and it's the origin of the reticular formation. And actually, the reticular formation is hindi lang nasa myelencephalon. Diyan lang nag-start, but it encompasses different parts of our brain. Okay? Tapos, okay, wait lang ha. I'm gonna open something. Ayan. The metencephalon. It has also many tracts. Tapos we have the pons. It's in the ventral surface. Okay? And we know naman, very popular yung pons for its functions as sleep. But there are other, like respiration. Ano pa ba? We have respiration, we also have breathing. Wait lang. Anuhin ko ang aking, ayan. Respiration, sleep, swallowing, bladder control, hearing, equilibrium, taste, eye movement, facial expressions, facial sensation, and posture. On the other hand, cerebellum is on coordination, more on the sensory motor coordination. So, yun, if ever, na the person is drunk, yung medyo may something sa kanya na apektuhan is the cerebellum. Kasi hindi talaga makakapaglakad ng matuwid ang isang person na drunk. And you can say, you know, yesterday night, your cerebellum was not in good shape. Tapos, tutungangan na lang sila. Ha? Ano yung sinasabi mo? Dami mong alam, girl. Charot lang. Okay, now let's go to the structures of the human myelencephalon, the medulla. Ayan, yung nasa maliit. So, yung cerebellum nandito, no? Sa yung mas malaki. And the medulla is nandito sa baba. Yung sa blue na side. Ayan. Yung cerebellum actually is the little brain. Okay? It's also called the little brain. Ayan, tingnan ninyo yung reticular formation. So it encompasses, di ba? At nandito yung pons. Di ba? How amazing our brain is. We also have the mesencephalon, the midbrain. So nandyan yung tectum, which has the inferior and superior colliculi. Inferior colliculi is for audition. Superior colliculi, meanwhile, is for the vision. And we also have the tegmentum. In the tegmentum, we have the periaqueductal gray, substantia nigra, and red nucleus. The periaqueductal gray is the one responsible for analgesia. Okay, so alam niyo yun, analgesics, di ba? Yung mga para sa pain, yung mga na-heartbroken, sabihin natin, ayoko na sa periaqueductal gray ko. Ayoko na. Ay, wait lang. Kailangan palang ma-stimulate ang periaqueductal gray ko para mawala na yung pain. Charot. Okay. Going back. We have the red nucleus. Okay, it's also important for sensory motor, yung red nucleus. And we have the diencephalon, yung thalamus and hypothalamus. So, kaya sinabi na hypothalamus kasi it's hypo sa thalamus. Okay. Very good, ma'am. Hindi, nasa mababa siya sa thalamus. Kaya hypo. So, meaning ba yung hypothalamus niyan ay nasa baba ng thalamus? De, charot lang. Yes.
Ma'am, ma-ask lang po ako. During kasi naman psych day naman siya, other gadi related din, pero bakit ma-ask lang ba ako for clarifications? During po kasi ang psych day, bakit na-mention daw ko nga ito hypothalamus is not responsible for love?
It's more responsible for, it's one of the responsible for emotions. Okay? So, more likely, kung sabihin natin, siguro yung sinasabi nila na I love you with all my hypothalamus. So maybe yung gusto nilang i-point out there is yung emotions. But you know, love is more complex than just having emotions.
Okay.
Diba? Oo. There are a lot of things. Pero, kasi nandyan din kasi yung sexual behavior, no? Feeding, ano pa ba? Sleeping. So that's why siguro the common na mga memes na I love you with my hypothalamus. Kasi hanggang sexual lang sila. So that could be. Pero hindi yan yung number one talaga na yung sa love lang. Kasi marami pang mga kinds of hormones that are also interactive. Okay?
Ang nakadilugod mga definition na yakan daw nga hypothalamus, small structure in the brain located below the thalamus and directly above the pituitary gland, responsible for motivational behavior such as sleep, hunger, thirst, and sex. I'm not sure. Ano ba? Hindi na ako sure.
Okay. Yeah, they are highly, the pituitary gland, which will be discussed little later, no, are also part din yung hypothalamus. So,
Okay.
that's also correct. Okay?
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Alright. Okay, so, napunta agad tayo sa hypothalamus, but we have also the thalamus, no? And it's the switching station, or it's the relay station. So, parang yung analogy natin for thalamus is, if you are familiar with, wait lang, iwan ko muna yung isang kaklase ninyo. Okay. If we have, like, the operating system ng phone call, diba? Para sa UP, they have this number, tapos, syempre maraming units yung UP. So, if you don't know the local number, you will call it. And then, the operator there will give you the local number or will connect you there. So, parang ganun yung yung thalamus rather. Okay? So, it's the one that receives information from our body or from other organs, yung mga, using the nerves, of course. Tapos, it's the one that sorts out. Okay, is it for our forebrain? Is it for our hypothalamus? So, mga ganon. But there is a specific, no, na part or system na hindi nag-aano sa thalamus, which will be discussed in other chapters. Okay, I believe it's a sensory, may part sa sensory motor system, no, or in perception. Ayan. So, another icebreaker. So, did you know that the brain can't feel pain? It's the one that interprets pain signals sent to it, but it does not feel pain. And so, in the same way also, ma-relate natin dito yung thalamus. Kasi it's the thalamus that relates, no, the information signals, but it's the brain that makes sense. Okay? Kasi, for example, no, if yung part ng brain that is na lesion, if it's lesioned, more likely hindi siya makapag-perceive na in our yung natin na cut na, no? Yung ating kamay na cut na, hindi pa rin niya yung pain signals. So that's why, no, the brain really can feel it, but it's the one that interprets. It's the one that makes sense. Okay? So that's why we have to use our brain para ma-process natin yung mga pain natin. Wow, may hugot. Iano pa natin yan, i-push pa natin yan. Okay, next. The major structures of the brain. Now we have the mesencephalon, the midbrain. So, ayan. We have there, no naman, nasabi na natin yung periaqueductal gray. So that's why it's gray kasi it's color gray. Then we have the red nucleus. Red siya kasi it's red. The substantia nigra is black kasi it's coming from its word. It's true to its word. So ayan. Ayan ang mga natin. Alright. The human diencephalon. So, ayan, andyan yung nabanggit na din natin. Ayan yung hypothalamus, no? The thalamus, it's just below talaga ng thalamus. Yung parang almond shape. Yan yung thalamus kasi nasa baba yung hypothalamus. Then we also have here the pons, no? Nakita na natin dito. And the cerebellum. Ayan. And we also have there the optic chiasm, no? It's the one that is connecting the optic nerves. Then we have the mammalian body here. Then the pituitary gland, yung binanggit na nga kanina ng isa ninyong classmate. Alright, so cerebral cortex. So we have the convolutions to increase surface area. And the convolutions are mas nagiging corrugated siya. No? As you enhance your intellectual ability, there are different kinds of mind games, reading, no, of studying. So, as time goes by, mas maganda if you will really continue learning, be a lifelong learner, hindi lang na within the 4 years that you are here, para maging mas marami yung convolutions. Okay? The longitudinal feature is a groove that separates right and left hemispheres. So ito, yung sa gitna talaga, okay? The one that you will use for mid-sagittal. The corpus callosum is the largest hemisphere connecting tract. So nandyan sa loob. Okay? And the outermost part of the forebrain is responsible for analyzing sensory processing and higher brain functions. So we know naman about that. Okay, nandito yung cognition, nandito yung planning, no? Ano pa ba? Foresight. So those things. Okay, so here, no? When we say pala fissure, it's the valley, while the gyra or gyrus, yun naman yung heel. Okay? And don't forget, no, to locate them. So, yun. So, ayan, the longitudinal feature on the left na image natin, dyan siya. You see the corpus callosum, the connecting one. And we have earlier, yung nandito nga, yung blue, yung lateral ventricle, dyan dumadaan yung ating CSF, here. Okay? The hippocampus. The hippocampus pala is the one that is responsible for memory, especially spatial. Okay? Ayan. And the central fissure is here, no? Yung central fissure natin, kailangan natin malaman. Let's go now to the right part. So, ayan, yung between ng blue tsaka yung violet, so that's the central fissure. So, it's in between the pre-central gyrus and the post-central gyrus. Okay. So, aside from fissure, we also have sulci, no? Sulcus, or sulcus na singular form. So, valleys din yung sulcus or sulci. But yung fissures are large valleys. Okay? Ayan. Tapos, we have also the lateral fissure. It's naman the one that yung nagsa-separate, no, sa ating temporal lobe and also the frontal lobe. Okay? And the other things. Yung natin, yung central fissure, it's the one that separates our frontal lobe and the parietal lobe. Right? Okay. Ayan. So, yun. Napahapyo na nga kanina yung limbic system, no? And part of which is the pituitary gland, no? So, here, the regulation of behaviors. So, it includes there the mammalian bodies, hippocampus, amygdala, fornix, the cingulate, the septum. So, yan. The limbic system is the one that is responsible for emotions and memory. Then we also have the basal ganglia motor system. So, we have there the amygdala, striatum, the caudate nucleus and the putamen, and the globus pallidus. So it's more on the motor. The limbic system. Okay, ayan. Ayan yung kanyang Ayan. Then we have the basal ganglia, no? Structures in the forebrain that help to control movement. So when we have a damage in the basal ganglia, it may contribute to Parkinson's disease. And yun, Parkinson's disease may have may symptoms nga for having difficulty, no, in motor performance of movements, no. And also the basal ganglia allow us to perform movements to obtain rewards. And nabanggit kanina yung nucleus accumbens because nucleus accumbens has been found to be responsible for rewards, no? The reward system of our body. So that's why it's highly na research na reason for having the addiction to drugs, okay? And other kinds of reinforcers. So what do you trigger your nucleus accumbens? Okay? Is it Facebook? Is it social media? Wag naman sana drugs, okay? Or siya na, wag na nga lang, charot. Okay. Ayan. So we have here the summary of the major brain structures. So ito yung mga pinaka-importante for now, no? So, as much as possible, please do have notes about the different functions, no, of these structures. Kasi yun naman yung pinaka-importante natin eh. Kasi we don't have a laboratory. And even if we have a laboratory subject, we cannot do that now kasi nga online tayo. Okay? So please focus more on their functions. And isama niyo na rin yung structures para medyo alam niyo, but focus more on the functions. So I will give a run through about it. Just you may want to replay this, or you may want to have your own. You can just take notes, no? Now or later, or you already have. Advanced kasi ako mag-isip. Char. Okay, so let's start. So here, the telencephalon, no? On the beige part, yung pinaka-light beige. Beige naman talaga yan. So the telencephalon, we have there the cerebral cortex, the major fissures, major gyri, the four lobes, limbic system, basal ganglia, cerebral commissures. So in the neocortex, on the cerebral cortex, we have the neocortex and the hippocampus. And the neocortex consists of the 90%, okay, of the cerebral cortex. And it has 6 sections. As I said earlier, hippocampus is for memory, is specifically for spatial. When we say spatial, ito yung surroundings. Okay? Location, pag-locate, okay, that's spatial memory. Then, next, the major fissures, we have the central, lateral, and longitudinal. The central is the one that separates the frontal and the parietal lobes. Okay, so it's in the, as I've said earlier, no, yung pinakita ko na, nasa gitna siya ng precentral and the postcentral. The precentral is the one that is specific for motors, while the postcentral gyri is the somatosensory. Then we have the lateral fissure. It separates the parietal and the temporal lobes. The major gyri, nasabi ko na naman, no? The superior temporal gyrus, it's for addition. Then the longitudinal fissure separates left and right hemisphere. Okay, so the cingulate, the supratemporal gyrus, it's for audition and language. Then cingulate, it's for cingulate gyrus, it's for the limbic system and the emotions. And we know naman the frontal, no? Frontal lobe, motor, and other complex cognitions. The temporal, it's for audition and language. The parietal lobe, it's for body sensations. The occipital, we know that it's the vision. The limbic systems, the amygdala is for emotions and fear. There were even mga studies about the amygdala, if it's lesioned, nung halos wala ng fear. Yan yung talagang no fear. But fear has a very important role in our life. Kasi if we will cross the street, if there is no fear, we will just cross even though there are a lot of cars. Okay, so, but if we are very overwhelmed by fear, hindi rin siya maganda. Okay? Next, even though there is no stimulus na talagang kailangan natin mag-fear. Next, hippocampus, we know the memory, for spatial memory. The fornix, it's also for memory. The cingulate cortex, septum, and the mammalian body, it is a function for emotions. Basal ganglia, we know naman na it's for motor, diba? Motor response. So we have there the caudate, nucleus, the putamen. It's part of the stratum. That's why it's called stratum, because it's striped. Okay? Striped siya. We also have the nucleus accumbens, and the globus pallidus. I said earlier that the nucleus accumbens is for reward. Then we have the cerebral commissures. And we know that the corpus callosum is the one that is connecting between the two hemispheres. The diencephalon, sorry. We have there the thalamus. And in the thalamus, we have the massa intermedia. It connects the two lobes of the thalamus kasi dalawa din, di ba? Parang two almond shape kanina. It's the massa intermedia yung nagko-connect. Then we have the lateral geniculate nuclei. It's for vision. The medial geniculate nuclei, it's for audition. The ventral posterior nuclei, it's for soma sensory. So kung titingnan ninyo, little brain talaga yung thalamus. Kasi parang halos nandyan sa kanya yung big part, di ba? Parang yung lobes ng yung meron siya for motor, vision, audition, and somatosensory. Hypothalamus. It's for eating, sleeping, and sexual behaviors. The mammalian body, we already said, memory and the spatial memory. Optic chiasm is where optic nerves come together. The pituitary gland is for the release of hormones. Okay. Next, we have the mesencephalon. We have there the tectum, the superior colliculi, and also the inferior colliculi. Superior is for vision and visual motor response. Inferior is for audition. The pigmentum, we have there the reticular formation, and it's for arousal. And there is one topic actually that talks about the reticular formation in detail. So I believe it's on the hunger and other sexual drives, pero unfortunately we will not talk about it in the class. But if you wanted to know more about it, you're free to read about it. Okay. We also have the Cerebral Aqueduct. So it connects the third and fourth ventricles. The periaqueductal gray, analgesia. Then we have the substantia nigra and the red nucleus. It's for sensory motor function. Okay, so if you were able to see, marami talaga yung for motor function. Kasi we are a motor talaga na person. We are made to move. Okay, so That's why we need to move. All right. So metencephalon, reticular formation. I already said that, no, kanina. Pons, sleep, respiration, posture. Cerebellum. We also have this sensory motor and cognition. And lastly, the myelencephalon, or the medulla, we have the reticular formation. So you can see it encompasses. Okay? So, yun. That's it. And our time is, time check, 12:12.